and the start of the playoffs. What does the path look like for him in terms of being able to suit up next season?
Yeah, I think that a number of fans have wondered if Florida would have to trade someone like Evan Rodriguez off their roster to make things work. I don't believe that's going to be happening. First of all, they consider Rodriguez a really important player. But secondly, I think we're going to find out at some point here that Tkachuk will miss the start of the season. I think he'll be back in time for the Olympics. Obviously, that's a huge deal for him, and it was always going to be set up that way. But I think he's going to miss a start of the year and a chunk of time after that. I don't know what the timeline's going to be, but it's going to be something like that. And congratulations to the Tkachuks on what looked like a beautiful wedding. Something else I wanted to mention that was kind of funny. So we know now from a couple of podcasts, one, the Spit and Chicklets podcast, and Sam Bennett went on the Empty Netters podcast, about when Brad Marchand was traded there, the jokes that started going around over who was traded for them, because it took a while for it to come out. When Florida came to Toronto after the trade deadline, Evan Rodriguez, who's a great guy, pulled me aside and said, the next time you do a trade, you don't wait an hour to post what the return was.
It's pins and needles for a bit there.
I think a few guys were. I mean, we saw what they all did to each other. They were just clobbering each other by throwing fake returns out there. He's a good guy. I got the message, Kyle. Definitely don't let teammates play practical jokes with each other, making them terrified that they're getting dealt out of a situation they're happy in. Message received. Message received.
That's good. I mean, that's a tale as old as time, though. The old trade deadline pranks about, better get off the ice, GM wants to see you, to try to hint at the fact that they might be being traded somewhere when nothing was in fact going on.
So I remember there was one situation a few years ago where we were traveling, and we were traveling with someone, and they wanted to get upgraded on a flight. And they went in and sat down, and we went into the plane, and we said to this person, hey, they just called you at the front desk. So he went running off the plane, and they're like, no, we didn't call you. And we texted someone else and said, when you get on the plane, because we knew that they were late, or they like to board last, go pie this guy. I'm not going to say who it was. And tell him that they called his name. So, hey, they just called you. And he ran off the plane again. I'm like, I'm sorry, we didn't call you. And he figured out fantastic. After the second one. He was sour. Sour.
Yeah, that's something that can get under the skin of a frequent flyer. The not so true
it's similar to
call to the desk of...
It's similar to taunting teammates about a trade. That's definitely the same thing.
Yes. Exactly the same thing. All right, well, how about as we look ahead to the Winter Olympics in Milan in February? So Team Canada announced their orientation camp coming at the end of this month, the 26th to 28th in Calgary. 92 athletes in total for the men's, women's, and para. 42 NHL players, including all members that were part of Team Canada Four Nations team. So for those that were selected to this camp, what does it mean for them now going forward?
So one of the things we kind of wondered about, and people wondered about, is does this just mean that only these players are now eligible for the Olympic team? That, as in, can anyone not on the list be added in season? And I was told the answer to that question is yes. There is a long list of players that includes some who are not coming to Calgary this summer. So don't just assume that only these players are eligible. And one of the great things about enjoying hockey and being a hockey fan, whether you're in Canada or elsewhere, is debating national teams, right? And so you still have plenty of room to debate those who are not on this list. because there are others on a long list. And one of the reasons I was curious about it is with the IOC in the Olympics, you have to enter protocol, right? So if
testing in that,
if you don't enter, sorry, that's a better way of putting it. If you don't enter their drug testing protocol, then you can't compete at the Olympics. So there is a longer list of players and you have to get into it early. It's not something you can't just show up like a week before the Olympics and say, oh, I'm here for the testing. No, it has to start early. I know there were some players who were going through the process earlier this summer. So it is longer than just the names who were invited to Calgary. You know, I think I'm not surprised Celebrini was there. I was pleasantly surprised that Connor Bedard was there. I think it's important to have players who are going to be a big part of the future on common, at least by osmosis, be around some of these players. But, you know, Bedard, even though he had good intentions of working on his strength and his explosiveness this summer, as he's discussed, I was wondering if not going to the Worlds would hurt him. And I know I wasn't the only person wondering that. So I'm glad to see that he's at least getting an invite to this orientation camp, because he's going to be playing for Team Canada for a long time. And at the very least, he should be around some of those great players.
Okay, Elliotte, another thing we wanted to mention here, the 5 players that were acquitted in the Hockey Canada sexual assault trial: Cal Foote, Dylan Dubé, Michael McLeod, Carter Hart, and Alex Formanton. All 5 remain suspended by the league at this time. So I'll just ask you this: is there anything else worth mentioning on this file here for now until the commissioner decides what the next course of action is?
I think it's really irresponsible to speculate until we have a league ruling on this. I don't think anything more needs to be said about that until we know if they're eligible to play. I think I just don't think it's smart to speculate on where they could play.
Okay. All right, with that, it'll take us to the final thought, which is brought to you by GMC. So, Elliotte, before we broke for the summer at the beginning of July, it's our last thought line of the season. Todd in Connecticut wrote in with a question about the first no move or no trade clause in the salary cap era. Now, I went rogue with the question and went back to like one of the first ones ever in the history of the league. But you, much more smarter and astute than I, actually found an answer to the question Todd was specifically asking. What have you found?
Well, I'm not smart or astute. I think you just committed libel against the words smart and astute.
I was like, you're not going to sue me, are you?
But somebody else did send in a note, and they had the answer to that question, that in the salary cap era, the first player to receive a no trade clause was Sergei Zubov.
Oh.
So that individual did not want their name used, which is perfectly acceptable. If you prefer the cloak of anonymity, we will grant that. But he did have the answer. Sergei Zubov in the cap era was the first player to get it. I wanted to do a couple other shout outs too. I went to Anthony Stewart and his wife Shantae started Hockey Equality, and they had a fair or like a fun day a couple of weeks ago, and I went to go see them. And Anthony was awarded with a Certificate of Exemplary Work to Canada, which he's absolutely deserving of. He does a lot of great things to grow hockey in this country. And at it, I met a loyal pod listener named Joelle, who had a